The USB stick arrived on a Tuesday morning, concealed within a plain manila envelope devoid of any return address. Evan Lark turned it over and over in his hands, scrutinizing the unpretentious piece of plastic that was destined to shatter his marriage within the next 60 seconds. He inserted it into his laptop without a moment's hesitation. The video file loaded, revealing grainy footage captured in a hotel room. Luxurious sheets, scattered champagne bottles, and his wife Celia intimately entwined with a man who was decidedly not him. A timestamp flickered at the bottom of the screen. 3 days ago, Saturday night, the same evening as Naya Greer's bachelorette celebration. Evan's coffee, untouched, grew cold as he watched Celia's lips curve into a laugh, observed her plant kisses on another man's neck, and saw them stumble towards the bed. The camera, an impassive observer, followed their every move, documenting it all with stark clarity. In the lower corner of the frame, a text overlay materialized. Thought you should know, T. His phone vibrated with an incoming call from an unfamiliar number. Evan, it's Theo Marsh from Jefferson High. I was working security at the party on Saturday night. Evan recalled Theo, a withdrawn student whom he defended during their junior year. Apparently, Theo's memory was as sharp as his gratitude. Why? Evan inquired, his voice remarkably level, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning within his chest. Because you once intervened when my life was on the line, Theo replied. Now I'm simply returning the favor. The call concluded. Evan remained seated in his cramped insurance office, the air thick with the scent of paperwork and the hum of fluorescent lights, watching his life's foundation crumble in high definition. Celia reappeared on the screen, murmuring something to her paramour that elicited a chuckle. The man's face gradually came into focus. Adrian Carnes, an associate from Celia's logistics firm. Evan snapped the laptop shut. At 39 years old, he was discovering that his entire world had been built on deception. Yet instead of fury, a chilling, calculated resolve settled within him. He retrieved his phone and dialed his doctor's office. I need to schedule STD testing for my wife and myself, he stated calmly. Today, if at all possible. Dr. Martinez delivered the results with practiced professional empathy. Evan sat opposite her desk while Celia shifted uncomfortably in the chair beside him. The good news is that everything is treatable, Dr. Martinez explained. However, you both tested positive for chlamydia. It's quite common, and with antibiotics, how... Celia interjected, her voice a shade higher than usual. We've been monogamous for 8 years. Evan observed his wife's performance with a detached curiosity. The subtle tremor in her hands, the deliberate avoidance of his gaze. She was a convincing actress, he conceded, but not quite convincing enough. Sometimes these infections can remain dormant for a period, Dr. Martinez offered diplomatically. The most crucial aspect now is treatment. Celia nodded vigorously. Of course, yes, we'll address it immediately. They drove home in an oppressive silence. Celia stared out the passenger window, her gaze fixed on the passing scenery, while Evan navigated the evening traffic of Richmond. Their residence was situated in Windsor Farms, a neighborhood that exuded an aura of prosperity to any passerby. Celia had been the driving force behind their relocation there, when her salary as an HR director made the mortgage financially feasible. Evan, she finally spoke as they pulled into their driveway, referring to the test results. These things happen, he responded, silencing the engine with a decisive click, echoing the doctor's earlier sentiment. A wave of relief washed over her features. She reached across the console and squeezed his hand. "I love you," she declared. "I know," Evan replied. That night, he waited until Celia had succumbed to sleep before retreating to his home office. He accessed their joint bank account, scrutinized credit card statements, and pored over phone records. Everything he had previously overlooked or dismissed now coalesced into a disturbingly clear picture. The late nights, the new wardrobe, the sudden dedication to fitness, the purchase of expensive lingerie he never saw. It all added up. His phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Check her work tablet. She left it charging in the kitchen. Evan crept downstairs. Celia's tablet lay plugged in beside the coffee maker, secured by a password. He tried their anniversary date. It failed. Her birthday, still nothing. On a sudden impulse, he typed in Adrian. The screen illuminated. WhatsApp remained open, displaying a group chat ominously titled Bad Girls Club. 4 members were listed: Celia, Nia Granger, and 2 other women Evan recognized from their shared social circle. He began scrolling, initially unsure of what he would uncover, until the messages started to paint a portrait of his wife he had never conceived of. One particular line immediately snagged his attention. "Evan's working late again," Celia had typed. "Perfect timing for Adrian." A devilish emoji followed the message. Nia's reply was swift. "Girl, you're playing with fire. What if he finds out?" "Please," Celia had responded. "Evan's too oblivious to suspect anything. He genuinely believes I'm some saint who attends book club twice a week." Evan continued to scroll, his thumb hovering tensely over the screen. A few messages down, Nia shared her own confession. "Speaking of playing with fire, Marcus and I hooked up again, 3 weeks before my wedding all." "You're terrible," Celia had replied. "Poor Declan has no idea what he's marrying." "What he doesn't know won't hurt him," Nia countered. "Besides, once I'm married to Vaughn and have access to his trust fund, I can do whatever I please." Evan blinked, his focus narrowing. The messages didn't cease. They only grew more damning. For months, these women had exchanged fabrications, reveled in their partner's ignorance, and openly detailed secret liaisons. Celia's contributions were particularly vivid, impossible to ignore. "Told Evan I'm staying late for a client dinner," she had written. "Meanwhile, Adrian and I are booked at the Jefferson until midnight." Nia had responded, "Girl, I swear you're going to end up on one of those true crime podcasts." "Only if Evan ever grows a spine," Celia shot back, "which not likely." His jaw tightened, but his hands moved with an almost surgical precision. He began to screenshot every message. Then he reached the most recent thread dating back just 3 days prior to the bachelorette party. "One last wild night before Nia becomes a boring housewife," Celia had stated. "I'm bringing my friend Adrian." "This party is going to be epic," Nia had replied. "What happens in Richmond stays in Richmond." Evan read the words 3 times before slowly placing the tablet back where he had found it. Upstairs, Celia slept soundly, her arm draped carelessly across his side of the bed. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, she appeared serene, beautiful, and utterly undeserving of his current disillusionment. He turned and walked back to his office without uttering a word. At his desk, he opened a new browser window. It was time to uncover everything he could about Adrian Carnes. Researching Adrian proved remarkably straightforward. LinkedIn detailed a successful career trajectory in logistics, marked by steady advancement within Cornerstone Transport Solutions. His profile indicated he was married to Rebecca Carnes, a pediatric nurse. They had 2 children, aged 8 and 10. Their family resided in a modest suburban dwelling in Mechanicsville, a commute of approximately 20 minutes from Richmond. Evan cross-referenced Adrian's social media presence with Celia's. They had been meticulous in their discretion, avoiding public interactions and tagged photographs. However, metadata painted a different narrative. Location services revealed them frequenting the same restaurants, hotels, and coffee shops on the same dates over the preceding 6 months. His phone rang. It was Theo again. "Did you review the video?" Theo inquired. "I did. There's more. I managed to record audio from the hallway. Your wife and that other bride-to-be, Nia. They were discussing their men and saying some pretty awful things." "Send it to me." The audio file arrived mere minutes later. Evan plugged in his headphones and listened as his wife's voice, distorted by the confines of the hotel room, drifted into his ears. "God, Evan is so predictable," Celia was saying. "Same boring routine every night. Same boring job. Same boring everything. Adrian makes me feel alive again." "At least you know what you're getting," Nia responded. "Declan's sweet, but he's basically a golden retriever with a trust fund. Zero backbone. I need a man who can actually take charge, you know." "That's why we have our side pieces," Celia chuckled. "Best of both worlds. Boring stability at home. Excitement when we want it." "Exactly. And after I marry Declan, I'll have enough money to really do whatever I want. Maybe even leave Richmond entirely. Start fresh somewhere more exciting." "What about Declan?" "What about him? He'll be heartbroken for like 6 months, then find some other woman to worship. Men like him always do." Evan saved the file and leaned back in his desk chair. The house was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the central air conditioning. Outside, Richmond slept soundly, blissfully unaware that several lives were on the precipice of irreversible change. He opened a new document and began to type. Plans needed to be formulated, timelines established, resources strategically allocated. Evan approached the concept of revenge with the same methodical, thorough, and profit-driven mindset he applied to insurance claims. By dawn, a coherent strategy had taken shape. The following morning, Celia breezed into the kitchen, clad in yoga pants and a sports bra. She bestowed a casual kiss on Evan's cheek as he ate breakfast, engrossed in the Richmond Times-Dispatch. "Good morning, handsome," she chirped, her voice remarkably bright. "I was thinking we should plan a weekend getaway soon, perhaps Virginia Beach. We haven't had any couple time in ages." "That sounds lovely," Evan replied, his eyes still fixed on the newspaper. "When were you considering?" "After Nia's wedding. I'll be absolutely exhausted from all the maid of honor duties." She poured coffee into a travel mug. "Speaking of which, I need to run some errands for the bachelorette party today. Final details, you know." Evan offered a non-committal nod. "What time do you anticipate being home?" "Probably late. You know how it is with wedding planning." She gathered her purse and keys. "Don't wait up." "Drive safely," Evan advised. After she departed, he made 3 crucial phone calls. The first was to Tommy Rodriguez, a private investigator whose services he had utilized on numerous insurance fraud cases. The second was to Janet Mills, a divorce attorney whose formidable reputation for aggressive tactics was legendary within Richmond's legal circles. The third call was to his bank. "I need to transfer some funds into a separate account," he informed his personal banker. "Something my wife cannot access." "Of course, Mr. Lark. How much are we discussing?" "Everything." By noon, Evan had successfully secured a private investigator, retained legal counsel, and transferred 90% of their liquid assets into an account of which Celia had no knowledge. His name had been removed from their joint credit cards, and he had initiated the process of meticulously documenting every shared asset for eventual division. Tommy called him at 2:00 in the afternoon. "I've got eyes on your wife," the PI reported. "She's at Adrian Carnes's apartment complex. Been there for about an hour. Get photos, video if possible. Already on it. This guy's pretty sloppy about covering his tracks. Parked right out front in broad daylight." Evan drove to his insurance office and spent the remainder of the afternoon diligently processing claims. Workers' compensation fraud, suspicious residential fires, staged automobile accidents, the patterns repeated with monotonous regularity. People invariably believed they were clever, failing to realize that falsehoods always left an indelible trail of evidence. At 6:00 in the evening, Tommy sent him a gallery of photographs. Celia entering Adrian's building. Celia at Adrian's window, clearly visible and laughing. Celia departing 3 hours later, her hair disheveled and her lipstick smudged. Evan forwarded the images to Janet Mills with a brief note. Documentary evidence, more to follow. Celia arrived home at 8:30 p.m., fabricating a story about a shopping excursion for wedding decorations. She presented him with bags from Target and Bath and Body Works as proof. "How did the errands go?" Evan inquired. "Exhausting, but productive. Naya is so particular about everything. I swear bridezillas are a real phenomenon." She kicked off her shoes and slumped onto their couch. "How was your day?" "Quiet, processed some claims, nothing particularly exciting." She nestled against him as they watched Netflix. Evan stroked her hair, offering perfunctory responses to her commentary on the program. She felt warm and familiar beside him. For a fleeting moment, he almost forgot about the incriminating photographs stored on his phone. Almost. Thursday morning ushered in an unexpected opportunity. Evan was reviewing claim files when his office phone rang. "Mr. Lark, this is Marcus Chen from Cornerstone Transport Solutions. I understand you handle insurance investigations." Evan straightened in his chair. "That's correct. How may I assist you?" "We have a situation concerning one of our senior analysts. Potential misconduct involving company resources. We require someone discreet to look into it." "What kind of misconduct?" "The sexual misconduct variety. An employee has reported inappropriate behavior, potential quid pro quo situations. We need documentation before we can take any definitive action." Evan allowed himself a small smile. "I would be pleased to discuss this further. Who is the employee in question?" "Adrian Carnes." "Do I know him?" "Not personally, but I can certainly investigate objectively." They scheduled a meeting for Friday morning. Evan concluded the call and immediately dialed Tommy. "I need you to investigate Adrian Carnes's work situation more thoroughly, specifically any complaints, HR issues, or inappropriate relationships with colleagues." "On it. Anything particular I should be looking for?" "Everything. This guy is about to have a very unpleasant week." That evening, Celia announced she was having dinner with Nia to finalize wedding arrangements. "We'll likely be late," she said, applying lipstick in the bedroom mirror. "Wedding crisis mode, you know." "Of course. Please extend my congratulations to Naya." "We will." Evan waited 30 minutes after she departed before driving to Adrian's apartment complex. Tommy had provided the address, and as expected, Celia's Honda was parked in front of Building C. He positioned himself across the street, affording a clear view of the entrance, and settled in to wait. His patience was soon rewarded. At 11:47 p.m., Celia and Adrian emerged together, their hands clasped, and shared a lingering kiss of farewell, reminiscent of teenage lovers. She remained pressed against him for a full minute before finally making her way to her car. Evan meticulously photographed the entire encounter. When Celia returned home at midnight, she found Evan reading in bed. "How was dinner?" he asked casually. "Stressful. Poor Naya is having second thoughts about the flowers. We had to contact 3 different vendors." She disappeared into their bathroom and reappeared in pajamas, her face cleansed of all makeup. "I'm exhausted." "Sweet dreams," Evan said. She curled up beside him with a sigh of contentment. "Love you." "Love you too." Friday's meeting with Cornerstone Transport proceeded even more favorably than Evan had anticipated. Marcus Chen, the HR director, was clearly desperate for assistance. "Adrian has been with us for 5 years, Chen explained. "A good employee, solid performance reviews. However, 3 weeks ago, we received a complaint from one of our female coordinators. She alleges that Adrian offered her a promotion in exchange for sexual favors. Did she file a formal complaint?" She was hesitant to do so initially, but yesterday another woman came forward with similar allegations. "We need to ascertain if there's a pattern of behavior that we've overlooked." Evan took detailed notes. "I will require access to personnel files, security footage, and the ability to interview employees confidentially." "Done. When can you commence?" "Immediately." Evan spent the afternoon at Cornerstone's offices, scrutinizing Adrian's employment history and conducting interviews with his colleagues. The emerging picture depicted a man who had become progressively more brazen over the past year. Inappropriate comments, unwelcome physical contact, and pressure exerted upon female subordinates who relied on favorable performance reviews. One employee, Sarah Kim, proved particularly forthcoming. "Adrian started acting weird about 6 months ago," she recounted to Evan during a private interview. "More aggressive, more entitled, as if he believed he was untouchable or something." "Did anything specific trigger this shift in his behavior?" "He began talking about an affair he was having. Some married woman who made him feel like a king," he said. "It really boosted his ego, I suppose." Evan nodded sympathetically. "Did he mention this woman's name?" "Celia, something like that. He showed me her picture once. Pretty blonde. Looked like she had money. He was obsessed with her." "Thank you, Sarah. This has been very helpful." By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Evan had compiled a comprehensive report detailing Adrian's pattern of misconduct. He had also discreetly installed a small recording device in Adrian's office, an action that was entirely illegal but deemed necessary for the next phase of his plan. Celia was already home when he arrived, cheerfully preparing dinner and humming a tune. "Perfect timing," she announced, kissing his cheek. "I made your favorite chicken parmesan with pasta." She only prepared his favorite meal when she harbored a sense of guilt about something. "Smells amazing. What's the occasion?" "No occasion. Can't a wife make dinner for her husband?" She poured him a glass of wine and sat opposite him at their dining room table. "So, how was work today? Any interesting cases?" "Just the usual fraud investigations, nothing too exciting." She paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. "I was thinking, maybe we should take that vacation sooner rather than later. Things have been so stressful with the wedding and work and everything. We could really use some time for ourselves." Evan twirled pasta around his fork, contemplating her words. "You seem stressed lately. Is anything specific bothering you?" Celia's fork froze midair. "Just the normal stuff. You know how demanding my job can be. And with Nia's wedding next week," she shrugged, "it'll all settle down soon." "I'm sure it will." After dinner, they watched a movie together. Celia fell asleep with her head resting on his shoulder, her soft breaths a gentle rhythm against his neck. She appeared peaceful, youthful, a stark contrast to the woman whose voice he had heard on that audio recording. Evan carefully extricated himself and returned to his office. An email from Tommy awaited him, the subject line reading, "Pay dirt." The attached photograph depicted Adrian leaving work at 3 o'clock that afternoon, 2 hours early, and driving directly to a hotel in downtown Richmond. 30 minutes later, Celia's Honda pulled into the same parking lot. There were more photographs. Adrian and Celia entering the hotel together, Adrian's hand resting on her lower back as they awaited the elevator. Timestamps indicated they had been inside for over 2 hours. Evan saved all the images to a secure folder and began formulating phase 2 of his plan. Saturday morning dawned gray and humid, a typical late summer day in Richmond. Celia spent an hour preparing for what she claimed was a dress fitting for Nia's wedding. "I'll probably be gone most of the day," she informed Evan. "You know how these things go. Try on the dress, hate it, try on another dress, start over. Sounds exhausting. Need me to pick up anything while you're out?" "Just groceries if you get a chance. We're almost out of everything." She kissed him goodbye and departed in a cloud of expensive perfume. Evan waited until her car had disappeared around the corner, then dialed Tommy. "She just left. Where are you?" "Already following her. She's not heading toward any bridal shops, by the way. She's going toward Adrian's place." "Stay on her. I need to know everywhere they go today." Evan drove to the grocery store as promised, but instead of shopping, he sat in his car and made a series of phone calls. The first was to Rebecca Carnes, Adrian's wife. "Mrs. Carnes, my name is Evan Lark. I'm a private investigator working on a case that involves your husband. Could we meet briefly? I have some information you need to see." Rebecca's voice was cautious but tinged with curiosity. "What kind of information?" "The kind that explains why your husband has been working late so often recently." They arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Mechanicsville. Rebecca was younger than Evan had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with tired eyes and the somewhat frazzled appearance of someone juggling a career and small children. "My husband's having an affair," she stated without preamble once they were seated. "That's why you called, isn't it?" Evan nodded. "I'm so sorry. How long have you suspected?" "Months. He's been different, distracted, always on his phone." She stirred her coffee absently. "I found hotel receipts in his car last week." "What did he say when you confronted him?" "That it was work-related, business meetings with clients." Rebecca let out a bitter laugh. "I may be tired, but I'm not stupid. Who has business meetings at hotels on Saturday afternoons?" Evan retrieved his phone and displayed one of Tommy's photographs. Adrienne and Celia entering the hotel yesterday. "Her name is Celia Lark," he said quietly. "She's my wife." Rebecca stared at the photograph for a long moment. When she finally looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "How long?" she asked. "At least 6 months. That I can prove. Probably longer." "God," she whispered, covering her face with her hands. "The kids?" "How do I begin to explain this to the children?" "There's no immediate action required," Evans stated with a gentle tone. "However, I believe we can offer each other assistance. Adrian is facing significant repercussions at his place of employment. If your intention is to leave him, this would be an opportune moment to safeguard your financial situation." Rebecca dabbed her eyes and regarded him with renewed curiosity. "What sort of repercussions are we talking about?" Evan recounted the accusations of sexual misconduct and his ongoing inquiry. He also presented some of the photographs that Tommy had captured. Nothing overtly explicit, merely proof of the extramarital relationship. "I require copies of all documentation," Rebecca declared once he had concluded, "and I want him to compensate our family for the distress he has caused. I can facilitate that." They dedicated another hour to strategizing. By the time they separated, Rebecca possessed the name of a competent divorce attorney and an assurance that Evan would furnish any further evidence he unearthed. Tommy contacted Evan as he was driving home. "Your wife and her paramour have just taken up residence in the presidential suite at the Jefferson Hotel. Their plan is to spend the entire day indulging themselves." "Excellent. Secure photographic evidence of their arrival and departure. Ensure all timestamps are accurate, already on it. Oh, and one more thing, boss." They made an initial stop at a jewelry establishment. Adrian made a purchase of considerable value. Evan experienced his first genuine surge of indignation since this entire ordeal commenced. A jewelry store. Adrian was expending funds that ought to have been allocated to the support of his actual family on gifts for his wife. Which establishment? Schwarzschild, located downtown. They remained inside for approximately 20 minutes. Evan proceeded to Schwarzschild and engaged in a brief yet fruitful discussion with the sales associate who had assisted Adrian. A few strategically placed name drops and a fabricated narrative concerning insurance verification were sufficient to ascertain that Adrian had acquired a diamond bracelet valued at $3,000. It was for Celia, purchased using a credit card that was likely already at its limit, assuming Rebecca's suspicions regarding their financial standing were accurate. Evan parked his vehicle outside the jewelry store, a sensation of cold finality settling within his chest. This was no longer a mere dalliance. Adrian was making substantial long-term investments in his mistress, meticulously planning for a future that involved illicitly diverting her from their marital commitment. It was time to expedite the planned course of action. He placed a call to Janet Mills, his divorce counsel. "I need to accelerate our previous strategy," he informed her. "Submit the necessary legal documents on Monday. I want her to be served at her workplace publicly, ensuring maximum humiliation." "Are you certain?" We had discussed the advantages of waiting to build a more robust case. "The case is sufficiently strong, and I desire this to be concluded before she has any further opportunity to conceal assets or finalize any additional arrangements with her associate." "Very well, I will have the documents prepared. What about spousal support?" "She will receive no such alimony. Place your trust in me concerning that matter." Sunday passed without incident. Celia returned home from her purported attire fitting, accompanied by shopping bags and a new diamond bracelet, which she claimed was a token of appreciation from Nia for her exemplary role as maid of honor. "It is exquisite," Evan remarked, inspecting the bracelet. "It appears rather costly." "Nia's family possesses considerable wealth," Celia responded nonchalantly. She wished to procure something exceptional for all her bridesmaids. "That is indeed very generous." They spent the evening engaged in watching Netflix and deliberating on commonplace domestic concerns, such as addressing the water leak in their guest bathroom, whether to pursue refinancing their mortgage, and making arrangements for Thanksgiving with Celia's parents. These were the typical conversations of a married couple, with the singular exception that Evan was fully aware of the bracelet's exact cost and the true identity of its purchaser. He also knew that by this time next week, their separate living arrangements would be finalized. Monday morning, Celia departed for work in an exceptionally cheerful mood. "It promises to be a significant week," she declared, adjusting her lipstick in the hallway mirror. "Nia's wedding is on Saturday, and I have that crucial presentation to the board on Thursday. Following this week, life should considerably settle down." "I am certain it will," Evan concurred. At 10 o'clock in the morning, a process server entered the premises of Cornerstone Transport Solutions and inquired at the reception desk for Celia Lark. Evan was privy to this development because he had requested Tommy to be present with a camera. The photographs arrived 20 minutes later, depicting Celia's countenance frozen in astonishment as she perused the divorce papers, her colleagues observing with evident curiosity. The subsequent hushed conversations ensued as she hastily retreated to her office. Tommy's report was received an hour later. She contacted Adrian immediately. They are scheduled to convene for lunch to discuss the unfolding situation. Would you like me to record their conversation? Absolutely. At midday, Tommy positioned himself at a table adjacent to Adrian and Celia at a modest Italian eatery in the city center. The clandestine recording device, which he had surreptitiously placed in Adrian's jacket pocket the preceding week, another entirely illicit yet indispensable tool, captured their entire exchange. "This is an absolute catastrophe," Celia articulated. "He is privy to every detail. The divorce documents explicitly mention infidelity. To what extent is he truly aware? I have no certainty, but his demeanor has been remarkably composed throughout this entire ordeal. It is uncharacteristic of him. Perhaps he is simply processing the information. Shock, you understand. Some gentlemen tend to withdraw when overwhelmed by emotions." "You fail to comprehend," Celia interjected. "Evan does not succumb to emotional outbursts. He operates with calculated precision. His initiation of divorce proceedings signifies that he possesses a well-defined strategy. So, what course of action should we pursue?" "I am uncertain. My legal counsel advises that I attempt reconciliation or, at the very least, defer the proceedings to provide me with adequate time to ascertain the extent of his knowledge regarding our clandestine activities." "I reject that notion. Perhaps this development presents positive implications. Now we are liberated from the necessity of clandestine meetings. We can openly embrace our relationship." A protracted silence followed. Then Celia's voice, significantly softer, inquired, "Adrian, I must pose a question. Do you harbor genuine intentions regarding us, regarding a shared future?" "Without a doubt. Why would you even entertain such a query?" "Because you remain legally bound in matrimony, and if both of us are to initiate divorce proceedings, it is imperative that we comprehend the financial landscape, the extent of your liabilities, the nature of your assets. Do not concern yourself with financial matters. I have been diligently making preparations. Rebecca is unaware of a substantial portion of my financial holdings." Another pause ensued, then Celia spoke again. "Which holdings?" "Offshore accounts, cryptocurrency, liquid assets that she cannot access. I have been meticulously planning this for months, my dear. When the opportune moment arises, we shall have options at our disposal." Evan listened to the recorded conversation on 3 separate occasions, diligently taking notes. Adrian was actively concealing his assets from his wife, potentially in violation of the law, and this information would undoubtedly prove advantageous in Rebecca's divorce case. More significantly, he was deceiving Celia regarding his true financial circumstances. According to Rebecca, Adrian was deeply mired in debt and had been leveraging their shared property to finance his extramarital affair. The time had come for Phase 3. Evan contacted Marcus Chen at Cornerstone Transport. "My preliminary report on the Adrian Carnes investigation is ready," he stated. "Might we convene this afternoon? There are some urgent findings that require your immediate attention." "How urgent?" "Terminate his employment without delay. Utterly urgent." They met at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Evan presented a comprehensive dossier meticulously documenting Adrian's pattern of sexual misconduct towards numerous female employees, his misappropriation of company resources for personal pursuits, and his inappropriate involvement with a colleague within the HR department of another organization, specifically Celia. "My word," Marcus exclaimed, leafing through the photographic evidence of Adrian and Celia together. "She holds a senior executive position in human resources at Morrison Logistics. This represents a catastrophic liability. If word were to spread that one of our senior analysts has engaged in sexual harassment of employees and maintained an illicit relationship with an HR executive from a rival firm," he shook his head, "we stand to lose substantial contracts. I would strongly recommend immediate dismissal and a thorough review of his access privileges to company systems and confidential information. It is done. Can you formalize all this documentation for our legal department? It has already been prepared." Evan handed over a substantial file. "This should preempt any claims of wrongful termination he might attempt to assert." Adrian was dismissed at 4:30 in the afternoon. Security personnel escorted him from the premises, confiscating his laptop, mobile device, and all access credentials. Evan was aware of this because he had instructed Tommy to maintain surveillance from the parking lot. The photographs of Adrian carrying a cardboard box to his vehicle, his expression a mixture of shock and anger, provided a deeply satisfying visual. At 5:15, Celia placed a call to Evan. "Darling, I have something I need to confess," she began, her voice trembling. "Adrian was terminated from his position today. That is distressing news. What transpired? I do not possess all the specifics. Some form of internal HR investigation. They are alleging he engaged in misconduct towards female employees." "That sounds quite serious." "It is. And considering everything that is currently unfolding between us," she paused. "Evan, can we have a candid discussion this evening? A truly honest conversation? I believe it is imperative that we address the state of our marriage with complete transparency. Of course, I will collect dinner on my way home. Thank you. I love you. I love you too." Evan disconnected the call and allowed himself a smile. Celia was finally prepared to confront the truth. Unfortunately for her, honesty had arrived far too late to alter the outcome. That evening, Celia paced the living room restlessly while Evan sat at the kitchen table, calmly consuming Chinese takeout. She had changed into comfortable attire, jeans and an old sweater, and repeatedly ran her fingers through her hair in agitated circles. "I need to tell you something," she declared for the third time within a 10-minute span. Evan did not look up from his meal. "I am listening. It pertains to Adrian and to us." She ceased her pacing and met his gaze. "We have been engaged in an extramarital affair for several months. I am profoundly sorry, Evan. I truly am." Evan deliberately placed his chopsticks on the edge of the carton and directed his undivided attention towards her. "For how long?" "Approximately 6 months, perhaps 7, she admitted, tears commencing to well in her eyes. "It simply occurred. We were collaborating on a project together, and he possessed a distinct allure, unlike—" She faltered, then continued. "Unlike what I am accustomed to, he was exhilarating. He made me feel rejuvenated." "I see," Evan responded softly. Celia blinked in utter disbelief. Is that it? Is that all you have to say? Rising from the table, Evan moved into the living room. Celia followed close behind him, her arms clasped tightly around her torso, as if she were struggling to maintain her composure. What precisely do you wish me to articulate? He inquired without turning. I do not know, she replied. Shout at me, express your anger, anything. She wiped her nose on the sleeve of her sweater and sank onto the sofa. Your composure in this situation is quite remarkable. Evan faced her, his voice steady. Would vocalizing your displeasure alter the circumstances? No, she conceded with a tremulous exhalation. However, the statement hung in the air for a moment before she resumed. Evan, my intention is to salvage our marriage. The affair has concluded. Adrian's life is unraveling, and I have no desire for my own to disintegrate as well. We could pursue marital counseling. We can navigate through this. He took a seat in his reading chair opposite her, his expression inscrutable. Is the affair truly at an end? Yes, Celia affirmed with haste. Completely. When was the last occasion you encountered Adrian? Evan inquired, his tone calm yet firm. She hesitated for a fraction of a second longer than necessary, confirming his existing suspicion. Last week, when we were concluding matters. Which specific day? Last week, he pressed. Celia shifted uncomfortably. Why is that detail significant? Because I am attempting to reconstruct the sequence of events, Evan explained. Precisely when did you make the decision to sever ties with Adrian? A brief pause preceded her response. When I came to the realization of the detrimental impact it was having on our marriage, when I understood that I was on the verge of forfeiting something genuine for a fleeting infatuation. Evan nodded thoughtfully. That is indeed intriguing, considering that, according to my private investigator, you were at the Jefferson Hotel with Adrian yesterday afternoon, the presidential suite no less. You also shared lunch with him today, subsequent to his dismissal, during which you strategized on how to navigate our divorce proceedings. The color visibly drained from Celia's face. You have had me under surveillance. I have been meticulously gathering evidence for the divorce proceedings. Yes. Evan. She began to rise, then reseated herself. To what extent are you aware of my transgressions? I am privy to everything. The bachelorette party video, the sexually transmitted infection you transmitted to me, the WhatsApp messages in which you and Nia mock your respective spouses, your workplace dalliance, Adrian purchasing you jewelry with funds illicitly obtained from his family. Shall I continue? Celia stared at him, her expression one of utter horror. What video? Evan retrieved his laptop and played the footage from the hotel room. Celia watched herself embracing Adrian, laughing, and succumbing to intimacy with him. Upon the conclusion of the playback, she appeared on the verge of severe nausea. Who captured this? Someone who believed I deserved to be apprised of the truth. Evan, please allow me to offer an explanation. There is nothing to elucidate. You made choices. Now you must confront the ramifications. Celia's weeping intensified. What consequences? What actions do you intend to take? I intend to permit you to self-destruct. I am merely providing the instruments for that endeavor. What precisely does that entail? Evan closed the laptop and regarded his wife, soon-to-be former wife, with a semblance of pity. It means that Adrian has been perpetrating falsehoods regarding his financial standing. He is not concealing funds from Rebecca. He is concealing debt, approximately $200,000 worth, according to my research. Credit card liabilities, personal loans, and a secondary mortgage obtained without Rebecca's knowledge. Your liaison with him has proven exceedingly costly." Celia's tears began to subside, though her shoulders still trembled. "That is not—" "He claimed to possess offshore accounts," she whispered. Evan remained unfazed. "He deliberately misled you. Adrian is financially destitute, worse than destitute, in fact, and now he is unemployed, facing multiple accusations of sexual misconduct and undergoing a divorce where his wife is fully apprised of his hidden financial burdens." Her head snapped up. "How are you privy to all of this information?" "Because I have been in communication with Rebecca," he replied equably. "She is initiating divorce proceedings tomorrow. Furthermore, she is lodging a formal report with the authorities regarding the concealed debt, classifying it as potential financial fraud." Celia stared at him, her disbelief palpable. "You have conversed with his wife." "We have developed a rather close rapport," Evan responded. "Disillusioned spouses discover common ground." Her expression transitioned from shock to palpable anger. "Evan, this is preposterous. You cannot simply devastate individuals' lives out of personal animosity." "I am not destroying anything," he stated, rising to his feet. "I am merely revealing what has always existed. You and Adrian have annihilated your own existences. I am merely ensuring that everyone else becomes cognizant of the reality." A prolonged silence ensued. Then Celia looked up at him, her eyes filled with a desperate plea. "What about us? Our marriage?" "Our marriage concluded the very first instance you engaged in intimacy with Adrian," Evans stated flatly. "Everything that has transpired since then has merely been a procedural formality." She remained seated in stunned silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and desperate. "What is it that you desire from me? What actions can I undertake to rectify this situation?" "Nothing," he declared, reaching for his coat. "There is nothing to rectify." "There must be something," she insisted. "Money. I will relinquish everything in the divorce settlement. The house, my retirement fund, everything." Evan regarded her for a considerable duration, then stated, "I already possess everything. I have transferred it to accounts that you cannot access." Her eyes widened in alarm. "You are incapable of doing that." "That is illegal." "Actually, it is not," he countered coolly. "I relocated my assets to safeguard them against fraudulent claims, all perfectly lawful. But the house," she began, "it is registered solely in my name." Evan interjected. "You signed a quitclaim deed 2 years ago when we refinanced, remember? You mentioned it would simplify tax matters." Celia's face turned ashen. "You orchestrated this, all of it?" "No," he replied, retrieving his keys from the coffee table. "I prepared for this eventuality. There is a distinct difference." He walked towards the door without looking back. "I will be staying at a hotel tonight. You are welcome to remain here until the divorce is finalized. Subsequently, you will need to secure alternative accommodations." Her voice cracked as she inquired, "Where am I expected to go?" Evan did not pause. "That is no longer my concern." Evan proceeded towards the exit, then paused. "Oh, and Celia, you might consider undergoing another medical examination. Adrian has been romantically involved with other women besides yourself." Rebecca discovered evidence of at least 3 such extramarital relationships. He departed, leaving his wife sobbing on their shared sofa, and drove to a Hampton Inn situated near the airport. The room was compact and nondescript, yet it was his. For the first time in many months, Evan experienced a tranquil night's sleep. Tuesday morning presented an unexpected diversion. Evan was midway through his omelet at the hotel restaurant when his mobile device vibrated. The incoming message was from an unfamiliar number. "This is Nia Granger. We must discuss the wedding." He gazed at the screen for a moment before composing a reply. "I am uncertain if we have any subject for discussion." Her response was prompt. "I am aware that you possess leverage over me from the bachelorette party. I am prepared to offer financial compensation to ensure your silence." Intriguing. Nia was exhibiting signs of panic. Evan typed back a concise message. "Meet me at Ply's Deli on Boulevard at noon." He dedicated the morning to his office, catching up on his actual insurance-related responsibilities. Around 11 o'clock, Tommy contacted him with an update. "Adrian is experiencing a rather difficult period," the private investigator reported. "Rebecca has changed the locks on his residence. His credit cards have all been frozen, and word is circulating regarding the reasons for his dismissal. Have you received any information concerning his current whereabouts?" Evan inquired, leaning back in his chair. "A modest motel on Broad Street. One of those establishments that offers weekly rentals. Oh, and his vehicle was repossessed this morning." Evan allowed himself a grim smile. "Perfect. Maintain your surveillance on him. I wish to be informed if he attempts to contact Celia." "Understood," Tommy confirmed before terminating the call. Nia was already in attendance when Evan arrived at Ply's Deli. She appeared visibly anxious, repeatedly glancing at her mobile device and scanning the restaurant as if anticipating the arrival of paparazzi. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," she said as he settled into the booth across from her. Evan interlaced his fingers on the table. "What is it that I can do for you? I am aware that you are in possession of video footage from the bachelorette party," Nia stated, lowering her voice. "I know it depicts me with Marcus. I will compensate you $10,000 to erase it." He raised an eyebrow. "Why would I have any interest in deleting it?" "Because your anger is directed at Celia, not at me." Her voice was strained. "This does not need to negatively impact my wedding." Evan observed her closely. She possessed a polished, artificial beauty, accentuated by impeccable makeup, designer attire that exuded wealth, and jewelry likely exceeding the value of his automobile. Every aspect of her presentation was meticulously curated to project an image of affluence. "When is the wedding again?" he inquired casually. "This Saturday," she replied. "Declan's family is traveling from various locations. We are anticipating 200 guests. The venue alone incurred an expense of $40,000. That represents a substantial financial outlay," he noted. "It does," she agreed quickly. "And if you were to release that video—" She left the sentence unfinished. Evan tilted his head. "What precisely did you engage in at the party that causes you such significant concern?" Nia fidgeted in her seat. "I made some regrettable choices, imprudent decisions, but they do not accurately reflect my true character." "What nature of mistakes?" he inquired, pressing for details. "I was with Marcus, my former boyfriend." Her voice dropped to a whisper. We hooked up." Evan raised an eyebrow, but remained silent, allowing her to continue. "It was an act of foolishness," Nia stated. "I was intoxicated, apprehensive about the upcoming wedding, and he happened to be present. Merely a casual encounter," he asked pointedly. "We had intimacy," she admitted, her voice barely audible. Now, within the confines of one of the hotel rooms, it signified nothing, merely a bout of cold feet. Evan nodded slowly. "And now you are concerned that Declan might discover this?" Nia's eyes welled up with tears. He would be utterly devastated. He would completely lose his composure. "Declan has never been involved with another woman. He perceives me as this paragon of virtue who has never erred." She dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "He is an honorable man. He does not deserve to be subjected to such hurt. You are correct, Evan stated. He does not. So, she looked at him with a flicker of hope. You will delete the video. I will give it due consideration, Evan replied calmly. Her tone immediately became sharp. What is the implication of that statement? Instead of providing a direct answer, Evan reached into his jacket and produced his mobile device. He tapped the screen and displayed a photograph, not from the bachelorette party, but taken during Tommy's surveillance the previous week. This was captured 5 days ago. It shows you at the Omni Hotel with Marcus for a duration of 3 hours. Nia stared at the screen, utterly stunned. Why were you following me? I was not specifically tracking your movements, Evan replied nonchalantly. I was investigating the intricate network of extramarital affairs connected to my wife. You simply happened to be one of the entangled threads. This is utterly preposterous, she muttered. You cannot simply engage in covert surveillance of individuals. I am authorized to investigate potential insurance fraud, he countered, unperturbed, which in turn led to the discovery of workplace misconduct, which subsequently revealed infidelity, all perfectly within legal parameters. Nia looked down at the tabletop. When she finally spoke again, her voice was hollow. What is it that you desire? Evan did not hesitate. I wish for you to be truthful. For how long have you been unfaithful to Declan? Since we became engaged. 8 months. She covered her face with her hands. Marcus and I have a history. We were together for 2 years prior to me encountering Declan. When I became engaged, Marcus reappeared in my life, and I simply couldn't resist him. How can you marry Declan if you're still in love with Marcus? Because Marcus possesses no financial means, the words blurted out, loud enough to draw the attention of other diners. She lowered her voice again. Marcus works as a bartender. He resides in a studio apartment and drives a vehicle that predates me. Declan, on the other hand, has a substantial inheritance. His family holds ownership of a considerable portion of Henrio County. So, this is solely about monetary gain. It's about stability, about acquiring the lifestyle I desire. Nia met his gaze directly. Do you believe that makes me a detestable individual? I believe it signifies your candor. At last, will you dispose of the recording? Evan contemplated her query. Nia was accurate. His dispute wasn't with her personally, yet she was also Celia's closest companion and an accomplice. More critically, she was on the verge of irrevocably damaging a decent man's life for financial benefit. No, he stated definitively. However, I will propose a compromise. What sort of proposition do you have in mind? You must call off the wedding yourself. Reveal the truth about Marcus to Declan. Accomplish this before Saturday, and I shall keep the video confidential. Are you out of your mind? I cannot possibly do that. Then I shall handle it on your behalf. Saturday morning, precisely 1 hour before the ceremony. I will present Declan with a USB drive containing all the pertinent information. The video, photographs, timestamps. Allow him to determine whether he wishes to proceed with the nuptials. Nia regarded him with utter astonishment. You would truly go through with that? Ruin my wedding in front of 200 guests? Would I not be rescuing Declan from a union with someone who harbors no affection for him? It appears to be a public service. This is outright blackmail. No, this is a matter of choice. You have the option to disclose the truth to him privately and attempt to salvage the situation, or you can permit him to discover it publicly and face the repercussions. Nia began to weep openly, disregarding her appearance. He will never forgive me. Perhaps not, but he deserves the opportunity to make that decision. And if I refrain from informing him, then Saturday will undoubtedly become a remarkably memorable day for all involved. Evan departed from her at the table and returned to his hotel. He had calls to make and arrangements to finalize. The wedding was just 4 days away, and he intended to be prepared for any eventuality. Wednesday brought dispatches from multiple avenues. The initial communication arrived promptly from Rebecca Carnes. Adrian appeared at my workplace yesterday, she stated without preamble. Security had to escort him out. He was vociferously proclaiming that you had ruined his existence. Evan's tone sharpened. Are you safe? I believe so, she responded. He is currently more desperate than dangerous, but I felt it imperative you be aware. His behavior is becoming erratic. I shall have someone monitor his activities, Evan assured her. Any updates regarding the divorce proceedings? My legal counsel submitted all necessary documents yesterday, Rebecca confirmed. Adrian will be profoundly taken aback when he realizes the extent of his financial entanglement. It transpires he has been concealing credit cards from me for years. What is the approximate figure we are contemplating? Evan inquired. Close to 300,000, she stated with considerable bitterness. In addition to the secondary mortgage, he leveraged everything we possess to finance his liaison with your spouse. Hotels, dining establishments, accoutrements, weekend excursions. I inadvertently financed my own husband's perfidy without my knowledge. Evan experienced a chilling sense of vindication. He will be utterly financially devastated, Rebecca affirmed. Furthermore, his legal representative indicates that the accusations of sexual misconduct at his place of employment are also projected to be financially burdensome. He may very well be compelled to declare bankruptcy. Excellent, Evan remarked simply. The subsequent communication arrived approximately an hour later. It was from Janet Mills, Evan's legal representative for the divorce. Celia's attorney has expressed a willingness to negotiate, she reported. They are proposing an equitable division of all assets if you agree to uncontested divorce proceedings. Evan raised an eyebrow. What is their basis for negotiation? They possess no leverage, Janet stated. Her counsel is fully cognizant of her disadvantaged position. This offer stems from sheer desperation. Reject it, Evan commanded firmly. I desire fault-based proceedings with comprehensive documentation of the infidelity. Janet sighed audibly. That course of action will inevitably be acrimonious and public. I am anticipating precisely that, he responded. By midday, the third call emanated from Tommy, the private investigator. He has been attempting to contact your wife throughout the entire day, Tommy reported, calling, texting, appearing at her place of employment. She is unresponsive. Intriguing, Evan commented. Perhaps Celia exhibits greater astuteness than I had initially surmised. Or perhaps she is merely apprehensive, Tommy ventured. Word circulating within the community suggests Adrian has completely lost his composure. He is consuming alcohol excessively, issuing threats, and expressing intentions of retaliating against all those he deems responsible for the ruin of his life. Continue to observe him, Evan instructed. If his behavior escalates to a dangerous level, contact the authorities. Understood. Oh, and boss, Tommy added, I've overheard whispers suggesting that Nia Granger's wedding might be experiencing difficulties. There are rumors that the groom is experiencing reservations. Evan allowed himself a subtle smile. Indeed, that is quite noteworthy. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, his mobile device vibrated, indicating an incoming text message from Naya. I informed him about Marcus, about everything. The wedding is off. Are you satisfied now? Evan composed a reply. I am proud of you for making the correct decision. Her response arrived within moments. Declan refuses to even acknowledge me. His family is incensed. The vendors are retaining their retainers. I have forfeited everything. Evan offered no sugarcoating in his reply. You have lost some financial resources and certain superficial relationships, but you have reclaimed your integrity. Naya's final message was laced with venom. To hell with you and your integrity. I sincerely hope that you and Celia bring about each other's downfall. Evan offered no reply. He placed the device down, experiencing a grim, quiet sense of contentment that Declan Vaughn would not be squandering his existence on an individual who perceived him merely as a financial institution. Thursday morning heralded the most unexpected development. Evan was in the process of vacating his hotel. He had finally concluded it was time to secure more permanent accommodations when his phone buzzed. The display illuminated with Celia's name. He answered immediately. Evan, it's me, she stated, her voice wavering and unsteady. Something dreadful has transpired. A knot formed in his stomach. What is it? Adrian assaulted me last evening at my office, she confessed, struggling to maintain composure. Evan froze, his grip on the phone tightening. Are you physically harmed? I am bruised, frightened, Celia admitted, her voice cracking. He was inebriated and incensed, rambling about how he had lost everything. His employment, Rebecca, his future. He attributed all of it to me. Where are you at this precise moment? Evan inquired, already moving towards the exit. I am at the police station. I have filed a report. They are endeavoring to apprehend him. I shall be there momentarily, he pledged without hesitation. Upon Evan's arrival at the primary headquarters of the Richmond Police Department, he observed Celia in the waiting area. She appeared profoundly disheveled, pallid, and exhausted, with a conspicuous contusion darkening her left cheek. Despite the entirety of their shared history, witnessing her in such a state ignited an innate protective impulse within him, one he believed had been long extinguished. He sat beside her, maintaining a calm demeanor. Described the events that transpired. Celia gazed downwards at her hands as she recounted the narrative. I was working late, finalizing reports in anticipation of the divorce proceedings. Adrian arrived around 8 o'clock. He was intoxicated and enraged. He repeatedly asserted that I had irrevocably damaged his life, that every adverse development was a direct consequence of my actions. Did he issue any threats towards you? Evan inquired. Her eyes flickered towards his. He physically accosted me, shook me, and declared that if he were destined to fall, he would ensure I descended with him. She gently touched her cheek. When I attempted to disengage, he struck me. Good heavens, Celia, he murmured, his fist clenching. She surveyed her surroundings with evident nervousness. Security intervened before the situation could further deteriorate. However, Evan, her voice lowered almost to a whisper, he is not finished. He spoke of exacting retribution upon everyone. You, me, Rebecca, even Nia. He has completely deteriorated. Before Evan could offer a response, Detective Maria Sanos emerged from the lobby entrance. Mrs. Lark, she addressed Celia, we would appreciate it if you would reiterate your statement for our records. Celia nodded, rising to her feet. Certainly. As Evan began to stand, Celia reached for his hand, her grip firm. Remain, she implored. I am aware that our current circumstances are complex, but at this juncture I am consumed by fear, and you are the sole individual in whom I place my trust. He observed her bruised visage, her trembling digits, and his own. A portion of him still harbored concern, perhaps perpetually so. Very well, he responded softly. I will remain. The interrogation proceeded with meticulous attention to detail. Detective Santos posed her inquiries with a gentle yet resolute approach. When did the extramarital affair commence? Has Adrian ever exhibited violent tendencies previously? Do you have a secure location to reside? Celia responded with quiet candor, evading no questions. I have been residing at the residence, but if Adrian is aware of my location, we will arrange for patrol vehicles to conduct regular sweeps, the detective assured her. However, given his current mental state, it would be prudent to secure a temporary abode. Subsequently, Evan and Celia occupied his vehicle parked just outside the precinct. An uncomfortable silence permeated the atmosphere until Celia eventually broke it. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible, for remaining with me during that process. Evan maintained his focus on the steering wheel. There is no necessity for gratitude. There is, her voice fractured once more. After all that I have done, she averted her gaze as tears welled in her eyes. I have been exceedingly foolish, Evan. Regarding Adrian, our marriage, everything. He opened his mouth to speak, but she raised her hand. No, permit me to conclude, she insisted. I perceived Adrian as exciting due to his inherent danger. It transpires he was merely dangerous. She emitted a sardonic chuckle and wiped her face with her sleeve. Would you prefer the unvarnished truth, the absolute reality? Evan glanced in her direction. If you are inclined to share, I was experiencing ennui, she confessed. With us, with my existence, with the responsibilities of adulthood. She paused, then added, however, youthful and reckless is merely a more palatable euphemism for injudicious and self-centered. Evan offered no commentary. What was there to articulate? Celia inhaled deeply, steeling herself. I recognize that any reconciliation is now beyond reach. I am aware that you will never extend forgiveness, but I wish for you to comprehend that I genuinely grasp the magnitude of what I have forfeited. You are an honorable man, Evan. You merit infinitely more than I can offer. He regarded her, his eyes inscrutable. Where will you be residing this evening? I am uncertain, she admitted. Perhaps a hotel. My parents' residence is 3 hours distant. Evan contemplated his options. The prudent course of action would be to escort her to a hotel and depart, to allow her to navigate her own predicaments. However, Adrian's erratic behavior posed a threat, and Celia remained his legal spouse, even if not emotionally. You may occupy my hotel suite this evening, he declared finally. I shall take the sofa tomorrow. You can then make alternative arrangements. You are not obligated to do so. I am aware that I am not, but Adrian's unpredictability at this moment is concerning, and I do not wish for you to endure further harm beyond what you have already sustained. They proceeded to the Hampton Inn in silence. Celia contacted her workplace to report an illness, while Evan initiated communication with Tommy and Detective Santos. Adrian remained elusive, though his vehicle had been sighted in the vicinity of downtown Richmond. We must locate him before he inflicts further harm upon someone, Evan stated to Tommy during one of their exchanges. Tommy's voice crackled through the receiver. The authorities are actively pursuing him, but this individual has absolutely nothing left to lose. That characteristic renders him exceptionally dangerous. That evening, Evan and Celia opted for room service and occupied the bed, observing the news broadcast. The situation felt utterly surreal. Two individuals, once united by affection, now clinging to routine within an unfamiliar setting. During a commercial break, Celia disrupted the quietude. "May I pose a question to you?" Evan muted the television. "Certainly." She did not meet his gaze as she spoke. "When did you become privy to the knowledge of Adrian's involvement?" He reclined against the headboard. "The day you underwent testing for sexually transmitted infections. Your demeanor at the physician's office was convincing, though not entirely flawless." Celia's eyes widened perceptibly. "You were aware for several weeks and chose not to disclose it." "I was meticulously compiling evidence and formulating strategic plans," Evan stated in a measured tone. "Plans to ruin me?" she inquired, her voice hardening. He turned to face her. "Plans to safeguard myself? All subsequent events were merely a logical progression of consequences." "A reasonable assessment," she murmured, then fell silent momentarily. The palpable weight of unexpressed sentiments settled between them. Eventually, she inquired, "What becomes of our union now?" Evan maintained a steady gaze. "The divorce will proceed. You will establish your life anew. I will establish mine." "And Adrian?" Her voice faltered slightly. "Adrian will face the repercussions of his deliberate actions, precisely as everyone else is expected to." By Friday morning, a resolution was achieved. Evan's phone rang at 7 o'clock in the morning. He answered to find Detective Santos on the line. "We have located him," she announced. "Adrian Carnes. He has been apprehended on charges related to the assault of Celia." Evan inquired, sitting straighter. "Among other offenses," Santos responded, "it appears he has been quite industrious. He perpetrated a burglary at his former wife's residence, absconding with jewelry and electronic devices, attempted to utilize Celia's credit card at 3 distinct retail establishments, and furthermore, left a series of menacing voicemails for his previous employer." Evan exhaled audibly. "Will he be incarcerated?" "Oh, most assuredly," Santos confirmed. "He faces multiple felony charges. He will not be posing a threat to anyone for a considerable duration." After concluding the call, Evan turned to Celia, who was seated at the small hotel table, cradling a mug of coffee. "Adrienne has been apprehended," he announced. Relief visibly washed over her countenance. "Thank goodness. For what specific offenses?" "Breaking and entering, theft, credit card fraud, and the issuance of terroristic threats. He is projected to serve numerous years in prison." "Years," she repeated, her eyes wide. "He is confronting federal charges for the credit card fraud, in addition to whatever additional penalties Virginia imposes for the totality of his transgressions." Celia gazed down into her coffee, her voice a mere whisper. "So it is truly concluded, all of it, the criminal proceedings?" "Indeed," Evan affirmed. "Our divorce still requires formalization." "Right, the divorce." She glanced up at him, her eyes glistening. "I realize this may sound preposterous, but a part of me harbors a desire for us to embark on a fresh start, to pretend that none of this ever occurred." "We are unable to do so," Evan stated, his tone devoid of harshness. "I am aware," she replied. "However, if such a possibility existed, would you desire it?" He paused, appraising the woman opposite him. Still remarkably attractive, still intellectually sharp, still capable of exuding mirth when she wasn't feigning a different persona. Yet she was also the individual who had betrayed him for a period of 6 months, who had knowingly transmitted a sexually transmitted infection, who had openly mocked him behind his back. "No," he finally articulated, "I would not. Because you are incapable of genuine forgiveness, because I cannot place my trust in you," he elaborated. "And in the absence of trust, we possess nothing of enduring value to reconstruct." Celia nodded slowly. Tears welled anew. "I comprehend. I trust that you do," Evan stated, "and I hope that you glean valuable lessons from this ordeal." She emitted a sardonic chuckle. "What is it that I am expected to learn? That infidelity is morally reprehensible? I was already aware of that fact." "No," Evan stated, rising from the bed to gather his overnight bag. "That deliberate actions invariably carry consequences. That other individuals are not merely peripheral figures in the narrative of your existence. That when you inflict pain upon others, they may, in turn, inflict pain back upon you." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Was this then an act of retribution on your part? You inflicting pain upon me?" Zipping his bag, Evan paused and regarded her one final time. "No," he asserted firmly. "This was my refusal to accept the role of a victim. There exists a fundamental distinction." 6 months later, Evan stood in the parking area of Richmond International Airport, bidding farewell to a chapter of his life he had never intended to depart from, yet found intolerable to prolong. The divorce had been officially finalized 3 months prior. Celia had retained legal counsel specializing in damage mitigation, yet there was a paucity of material to control. The evidence against her was overwhelmingly conclusive, and Virginia's statutes concerning infidelity were notably stringent. She ultimately found herself with minimal assets, a selection of apparel, her vehicle, and a modest sum, sufficient to initiate a new beginning elsewhere. Adrian was currently serving a 7-year term in federal confinement. Rebecca had finalized her divorce, liquidated their shared residence to discharge his financial obligations, and relocated with their children to North Carolina to be in closer proximity to her familial support system. She had dispatched Evan a holiday greeting card expressing her profound gratitude for his assistance in extricating her from what she now recognized as a profoundly abusive marital union. Nia had completely absconded from Richmond following the scandal surrounding her wedding. The last Evan had heard, she was employed as a real estate agent in Charlotte and was engaged in a romantic relationship with an individual unaware of her past entanglement with Marcus. Some individuals, it seemed, never truly learned. Declan Vaughn had dispatched Evan a bottle of premium scotch accompanied by a note. "You have preserved my life. Should you ever require assistance, do not hesitate to contact me." He was reportedly romantically involved with a nursing professional from VCU Medical Center who shared his enthusiasms for outdoor activities such as hiking and volunteer endeavors, genuine passions as opposed to the fabricated interests Nia had cultivated for his benefit. Flight 447 to Denver is now boarding all passengers. Evan hoisted his carry-on luggage and proceeded towards the gate. He had accepted an offer of employment with a Denver-based insurance firm specializing in intricate fraud investigations. Enhanced remuneration, a more prestigious title, and a superior quality of life. An opportunity to commence anew in a locale where his personal narrative was entirely unknown. His mobile device buzzed, displaying a text message. The sender was identified as unknown, yet he recognized the originating number. "Heard you're leaving town. Good for you. I hope you find happiness wherever you're going. I'm sorry for everything." Evan perused the message twice, then deleted it without dispatching a reply. Certain exchanges are best left uncontinued. As the aircraft ascended from Richmond, Evan cast his gaze downwards upon the cityscape that had served as his domicile for 15 years. From an altitude of 30,000 feet, it appeared tranquil, systematically organized, akin to a place where adverse events did not befall virtuous individuals. However, Evan possessed a more profound understanding now. Adversity transpired universally, affecting all individuals. The critical element was discerning the appropriate method of response when confronted with such challenges. Some individuals succumbed to victimhood. Some embraced malevolence. And certain individuals, if endowed with intelligence, patience, and the capacity for strategic rather than emotional deliberation, emerged as survivors. The aircraft banked westward, charting a course towards Colorado, towards mountainous terrains and snow-laden landscapes, toward a future that belonged exclusively to Evan. For the initial time in several months, a genuine smile graced his lips. 3 hours into the flight, his phone vibrated, signaling a notification from his banking application. His investment portfolio had attained a new zenith, a financial threshold sufficient to acquire a residence nestled within the foothills of Denver, affording a panoramic vista of the Rocky Mountains and providing ample space for the canine companion he had perpetually desired. Yet Celia had steadfastly opposed acquiring. Financial resources that had once been jointly possessed were now exclusively his. Capital that Celia had contributed to accumulating through her human resources salary, yet had forfeited through her act of perfidy. As the flight attendant offered him a beverage, Evan retrieved his laptop and commenced researching canine breeds suitable for mountainous environments. German shepherds presented a promising prospect, loyal, intelligent, and protective, embodying qualities entirely absent in his ex-wife. The aircraft traversed patches of scattered clouds, progressing towards a descending sun, transporting Evan away from Richmond and towards an existence where he would no longer be compelled to question the veracity of individuals or the undisclosed realities concerning those he placed his trust in. Some might characterize his actions towards Celia and Adrian as excessive, even cruel. However, Evan preferred to conceptualize them as instructive. He imparted to them a crucial understanding that deliberate actions invariably precipitate consequences, that betrayal exacts a significant cost, and that certain men, when pushed beyond their limits, will retaliate with an intensity far exceeding any conceivable expectation. This was a lesson he fervently hoped they would retain throughout their remaining lifetimes. Below him, Virginia gradually receded into the encroaching darkness, marking the conclusion of the final chapter of Evan Lark's former existence. Ahead lay Lake Colorado, the promise of new possibilities and a profound sense of tranquility that emerged solely from the certainty of having effectively countered those who sought his downfall, and won